Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Mr. Seward, Celeste Eccles, board members of the chamber and members of this chamber. It gives me great pleasure to be here today and speak on behalf of the city regarding an update and overview of our agenda. Before I start, I can rest assured that my wife has already briefed me this morning to hold off on the corny jokes because the folks at the chamber are business people and they're trying to be to work by 9 o'clock. So I'm following the doctor's orders and I'm getting to the point today. So the city's population in the city of Florence is roughly 41,000 people. If you drive along Second Loop Road or drive down South Irving Street around 4:30 or 5 o'clock, it's clear we service way over 41,000 people here in the city of Florence. However, along with this growth over the last 10 years, we're expecting more. In the city of Florence alone, we are projected to have close to 3,300 residential housing units built in the coming years. These are projects that are either under construction, awaiting annexation, or almost complete. 3,300 residential units. Out of those 3,300 units, only 600 of those units are multifamily. I know that was a big contention at one point in our community. And the rest, roughly 2,700, are single family attached homes here in the city of Florence. So if you multiply the average number of residents in a home to the newly anticipated 3,300 residential housing units, this means Florence will have approximately 50,000 residents in the coming years, almost an 8,000 to 9,000 population growth. With this anticipated growth, the city has placed great emphasis on expanding and rebuilding our infrastructure in many ways. Unfortunately, there is no direct funding mechanism to help rebuild our roads. However, with the third penny sales tax being approved by our voters, approximately $41 million has been allocated to resurface over 183 roads here in the city of Florence and provide for major intersection improvements to Darlington and Lucas Street, Evans and Cashua Drive, Edisto and Cherokee Road, and Vista and Oakland Avenue. Now, I think this is my time here. Shameless plugs. I see we got a few state representatives in here. I can now advocate for something called a municipal penny. It's something that's in the legislature now, that if we was able to get that passed, the cities across the state will be able to get a lot more infrastructure needs passed, similar to how the third penny sales tax has provided significant infrastructure to our community. Having a city manager that is committed to improving the infrastructure of Florence is a major plus. I was sworn in on Thursday night back in 2020. I remember it plainly because I think I caught COVID that night. The next morning, I was scrolling in line to get tested. And I remember I got my first official councilman call. I don't know how this guy got my number. The first thing he said was, "Hey, man, my road is flooded. What you gonna do about it?" I said, "Wait a minute." It ain't been 24 hours. But I remember someone always telling me, when we build a city in a swamp, you can rest assured that every now and then we're gonna have a little bit of flooding. Randy has been instrumental in shifting council's focus to invest in our infrastructure. It's estimated that this cost may be upward of $100 million to revamp our stormwater system throughout the entire city. This can has been kicked down the road for decades. Therefore, the council took action to develop a stormwater master plan, as well as a list of stormwater improvements to be conducted over the next several years within the city of Florence. And in the coming year, we're seeking to possibly make a massive investment to tackle this issue head on. Now, when I was first elected to council, one of the major concerns, and maybe still to this day for a lot of members of the business community, was the need to address the corridors and our gateways into the city. To me, by far, the best corridor is off of I-20, located by Magnolia Mall. Of course, one of the forgotten ones is the one along the East Palmetto Street coming from the airport. We all know the story of how the economic developers in our area always saying that they have to pick up potential investors from the airport and drive them in the opposite way from the city, all the way back to I-95, and then bring them back by Magnolia Mall just to bring them in the city of Florence. So starting to address this issue is where I've learned my biggest lesson in my short time on council. And that is, if you want the city, the county, and the region to be successful, we will have to learn to develop and cultivate valuable partnerships with various entities in this area to achieve ultimate success for the city of Florence. With the collaboration and commitment providing for a better Florence, Dr. Bruce Lee Foundation, the McCall Foundation, and the County of Florence partnered with the City of Florence and our $1 million investment to begin the enhancement of the East Palmetto Corridor by providing the necessary funds to demolish the blighted old motel. There have been many attempts to obtain and demolish this blighted property since 2014, but it shows you what can be accomplished when we work together for the betterment of Florence. In addition, with the help of our leaders in the state legislature, we were able to obtain an additional $2.75 million grant for us to continue to expand and cultivate that area as a new hub for economic development. Now, I'm not campaigning for anybody, but that's good leadership. That's great collaboration, and that's what's needed to continue to move the Florence forward. So let's give our state legislators a round of applause. On behalf of my good friend Brian Braddock, I know he's in somewhere. He don't miss no event where it's free food. Brian Braddock he always said it's not just downtown, but what about around town? In addition, back in 2016, the previous council made a significant investment in infrastructure in our neighborhoods in regards to revitalization by investing $3 million into our communities. Earlier this year, through the Community Redevelopment Committee, by which me, Councilwoman Pat Gibson-Moore, and the chair of that committee is Ms. Lithonia Peaches Barnes, we recommended and got council to approve to double that historic investment and invest $6 million into our communities over the next 5 years for downtown revitalization. With this $6 million, we're able to also establish a nonprofit community development corporation named Florence NeighborWorks. This corporation can own, improve, and manage housing for low to moderate income persons and families in the city, promote the planned redevelopment efforts of the city, neighborhood revitalization efforts, and work with workforce development to educate and train people here in the city of Florence. This nonprofit was organized similarly to the Homes of Hope out of Greenville, South Carolina, which has shown to be a great benefit to its community. That organization began in 1998 and has transformed into the largest non-profit developer of single-family affordable housing in South Carolina. They've built more than 600 energy-efficient homes in Greenville alone, where everyone can thrive. And we are modeling that same corporation here in Florence off of that same model. So it's going to take time, but I'm confident that in the coming years, this organization is going to be successful. Also, just like any city across the country, there has been a need to maintain and refurbish abandoned and blighted homes in forgotten areas of the town. Unfortunately, these homes have been left to rot and decay by absentee landlords. They've also hurt its neighbors' property values, while at the same time serve as a safe haven for drugs and criminal activity. These abandoned homes have been an eyesore to our city and to many others across the country. Therefore, council invested $500,000 in demolishing abandoned and blighted homes within the city neighborhoods. It's estimated that with this investment, the city will be able to demolish between 100 to 125 homes to help to continue to beautify our communities. Now, the politician in me is like, okay, that's great. Now, Randy, let's do 100 homes in 100 days. He's like, oh, wait, slow it down, Councilman. Slow it down, Councilman. There's an application process to it. But being committed to infrastructure is not a flashy topic. To me, it's boring. I wish for the major wins, but I'm 100% certain in due time, these significant improvements will be the catalyst for a major, and I mean super major industry to want to invest back here in Florence because of those commitments we've made. Mark my words. Lastly, my grandfather was born here in Florence, South Carolina, but he's not ashamed to say that he left to move to Charlotte due to a drug addiction. He had the crack cocaine back in the 90s, excuse me. He's now created a multi-million-dollar business in Charlotte and employs over 20 people. He came home to visit one weekend and we had dinner at Town Hall. He told me about at that very same corner was once where he got his haircut from an older barbershop and how he remembered how abandoned and dilapidated downtown was. He said never in a million years would he think that Florence will be able to rebound the way it has over the last 15 years. And he's now considering moving himself and his business back to Florence. I said, well, if you're going to do that, what I need you to do is make sure you put the business in the city of Florence so we can collect that business licenses fee. Isn't that right, Randy? But this story is a story just like a lot of Florentines. They felt in order for them to succeed that they had to leave and move out of Florence. But now him and many others are starting to look at Florence again as a beacon of hope and opportunity in the PD region as well as the state of South Carolina. So I'm confident. Now, although the pundits might say that our dreams are too high, our ambitions are too big, I'm confident that with the teamwork of everyone here today in this building, we're going to continue to move Florence forward, but we're going to do it the only way that has been done in its totality, and that's block by block, brick by brick, calisand by calisand. When it's all said and done, we're going to build something big here in Florence, and then we're going to grow old and watch our kids build something even bigger. Thank you. Have a great morning.